So greetings and salutations, friends and family. It's back, it's 11:59, almost the noonday hour, and we are here live and direct from the Futures Forum, Future Sense Now, Caribbean American Heritage Month, and all the other things that you know I get up to. But what we're here doing also is celebrating June as National Caribbean American Heritage Month. And we're celebrating today our last day of Caribbean Blue Economy Week, Caribbean Smart Caribbean Week, and all the other names I'm trying to get into our consciousness as a community. We're here with a very special guest, Mr. Christopher Huey, sometimes known as Chewy, who is become known to all of us that are Jamaicans, Jamaicophiles, Jamaicanophiles, you know what it is, by his bold posts that occurred not too long ago, when he says, I'm carrying the Jamaican flag with me to space. And so welcome, Christopher Huey. How are you?
Thank you. Hi, Dr. Nelson. I'm great. Doing really good. Still riding high.
Wow. So, Christopher Huey, you first burst into our consciousness. When I say our, I mean our Jamaican community, obviously. I'm sure your friends knew who you were, but you first burst into the Jamaican diaspora consciousness with that post that says, I'm carrying the Jamaican flag with me. And I tell you, my phone and my email and my LinkedIn and everything I'm on was blowing up with people sending me things. Have you seen this? You see this? Because they all know I've been saying I'm the first Jamaican on the moon. So I'm sure they're wondering, will she make it or will Chris be first? All right, we don't know. But we was really excited to see that you, a Jamaican American, was kind of like. So tell us about, first of all, just how you got to Virgin Galactic.
So yeah, how did I get to Virgin Galactic? I didn't plan it, actually. It was maybe it was destined or just luck, but I've been with the company for about 6.5 years now. And before that, I spent about 5-6 years at Bell Flight in Texas. So I had a passion for aerospace and flight since I was young, playing with, Legos and lots of Discovery Channel and documentaries. And I grew up in Florida, in Orlando, kind of near the Space Coast. So it was a common occurrence to see space shuttles launching and landing growing up. And so I think it's just always been a part of the environment that I've been in. But I actually had a passion for helicopters. And so I pursued that and I ended up at a helicopter company. And then a good friend and mentor of mine ended up at Virgin Galactic and recruited me to come out here back in 2016. And so I was surprised. I was like, I don't see how a technical basis in helicopters can apply to the space industry, but if you think I'm qualified, I'm happy to give it a try. And I've been here about over 6 years now, and I've been leading several teams and several technical efforts. And turns out physics is the same no matter where you go. So that's something confirmed for me is Newton's second law, F equals ma, is pretty much the same no matter what you apply it to, whether a helicopter or a spaceship. And so that's the short story of how I got here.
Yeah, so right. So you began with a level of physics, helicopters, and here you are working in one of the iconic companies in the world, and certainly with an iconic founder. Everybody knows Virgin Galactic founder long before he got into space, but his industry in music and culture. So I think in many ways, he's very much beloved to Caribbean people because of his relationship to the music industry. So you're a mission specialist. What exactly is a mission specialist in the context of the industry, the aerospace industry and the shuttle industry in this case?
Yeah, so what is a mission specialist in this context? So Virgin Galactic is pioneering, one of the few companies pioneering the commercial human space flight industry. And so I'm going to characterize what that means in this context. So what Virgin Galactic is doing is building a commercial space line. So to make space flight accessible to as many people as possible in the long run. And so the flight that I was on, the flight I was a mission specialist on, was the last flight in our flight test program before we take our spaceflight system into commercial service and start taking paying customers. So my role as a mission specialist was to evaluate the customer experience and ensure that it's the best experience that our customers can expect to have, given that many of them have been waiting a very long time and have saved up all of their pennies for this once in a lifetime opportunity. So to date, mostly pilots and engineers have gone to space. And so we're entering a new chapter of space flight, specifically commercial human space flight, where you don't have to have an exceptional pedigree and backlog of experience and degrees and military combat experience and all that to become an astronaut. So to that end, we have to really flush out our process and our training to make sure that the system is adept and adaptable to anybody and everybody that can come and try and make the spaceflight experience as comfortable and enjoyable for as many people as we can. So I came to the role as a mission specialist as an engineer, but using my engineering brain to really be think critically and take into account all pieces of information and see how and critique it, evaluate it, see how it can be made better, see how we can elevate the highs and go and seek opportunities for improvement, things of that nature.
Yes, so you have made it to what we call the astronaut category. I'm still in the analog astronaut category, and I haven't even gone on my first analog mission. But the fact is, just knowing that, seeing that somebody, an engineer who, as you say, didn't go through the military realm, is a commercial person as well, who comes out of a Caribbean background, is also very exciting. And we all know, well, I certainly know, people don't know, that Keisha Shahaf, who is from Antigua, won one of the prizes. And I believe her and her daughter will actually be two civilians also going up on one of the first, quote unquote, commercial flights that you're testing, because you're an insider going up. So you're an insider mission specialist, behaving as if you're a customer, even though you worked on the product itself. And was so delighted. So question, so within the company, did you have to compete for that slot to be chosen to be the customer experience tester, or you just did people have to compete for that slot?
That's an interesting question. So the mission specialists were chosen by company leadership for a variety of reasons, all of which I'm not privy to, but yeah, it was not a competition per se. It was the mission specialist role. Yeah, it was, people were handpicked for this role.
Gotcha. So you must have been doing well, because in the conversations we have had, we just came out of a big conference, where Big Bet always stands as the analog astronaut community under the leadership of Dr. Sian Proctor, who was one of the people who went up on Inspiration 4. Inspiration 4 is another company's launch mission where they're bringing not regular people to space, and she has founded what is called the Analog Astronaut Foundation. And the idea is to have a place to begin to train people. All the people around the world who have been doing analog astronaut missions in Hawaii and Poland and Brazil and Jordan and Iceland and Austria are mostly in Europe. And here in America, through the Mars Society and Utah, there's people doing things here. Have really they know each other, but they really have not really come together as an industry. So because of what's happening, they're now coming together as an industry, and they're now setting guidelines as to what people who want to be commercial astronauts and work commercially in the space industry ought to know, and therefore setting guidelines. So these analog astronaut missions ought to be like some standards. And I use the word standards loosely because, as we all know, the whole space industry is like a self-evolving standard process, right? There's no standard. It's an evolving process. And in that conversation, I was excited to start to talk about how do we bring on new people. So this is why, as the founder of the Caribbean Space Society and want to get Caribbean people involved, I'm kind of backtracking through Kenya, because Kenya is further ahead than we are in the region. And I think if I can do it in Kenya, eventually the region will be ready to see it can be done in the region. So I'm sure many people now who probably thought it wasn't possible because of you already has had a total paradigm shift in their mind. So we want to talk about the whole reason why commercial space, why ordinary people, what is in it for us, for those people, including myself, I'm sure yourself, who believe that the future of humanity is in the stars. How would you answer the question if somebody was to challenge you and say, Chris, I don't know why you're doing this, What is your answer to that person who does not believe that. What is your answer to the question, why should we, first of all, be having space for all?
That question is challenging because there's a lot of different ways to answer it, and I think it's a very personal answer. And so I think it's a question we all think about, who, those of us who are in the space industry, how we're going to try and convince the people who may not be interested or who are maybe more critical of it that it's something worth pursuing. So I think there's a lot of ways to go about it. Like one, everybody's life already depends on the space industry, whether you realize it or not. And so you can put that argument aside. My personal reason is, and it's funny now, I can say this literally, but like for a global perspective, like to see the earth as a whole and see how it works together, and then how we as people and as a society and as an ecology need to work together to preserve the planet. So I think there's two kind of major perspectives. There's space for Earth, and then there's space for the exploration of our solar system and our universe, our galaxy and our universe. And I think all of those are valid. I think it is human nature to be explorers, to push the envelope of what is known and what is possible. And there's a lot we don't know about Earth and our own planet, but there's even more that we don't know about what's out there. And just seeing space, seeing our planet really brings things into context about what you think you know and how big or small that knowledge base is. I'm thinking back to when I was in space 2 weeks ago, and I was looking down at our planet, and I could see the edge of the Earth, and behind it I could just see blackness, just nothing but nothing. And yes, we know intellectually that there's a lot of stars and galaxies and things out there, but because our sun is so bright and our planet is reflecting all of that light, you can't see anything. You can't see anything but the planet. And so I think that's a really nice way to frame it, is it felt like Earth is just alone out here, guys. It's just us and a vast infinite of nothingness and no other life that we know of. And so I think studying why life exists at all and understanding our place on our planet and our place in our solar system and the universe is the key to understanding how to push society forward for prosperity and unity for all. So I think that's my major why is I grew up watching a lot of Star Trek, and there's a utopian society with Starfleet and all of that. And so I believe that a future like that is achievable, maybe not in the exact way Star Trek did it, but I look forward to a world where we're all bound together as one people, searching the universe for more life and just being pure explorers and digging into that childlike exploration and creativity and imagination that we used to have.
I really like that I guess perspective, because I grew up in Star Trek myself, in the sense that I grew up in a time when was what, the 70s, when we were into reruns as well. So I was watching like 2 or 3 times a day. And I remember coming to America to go to college and having the luxury of watching TV all day, which in Jamaica they don't really have at that time. We didn't have in Jamaica. So I was really watching like 2 or 3 times a day. So I really can tell you different episodes, the Q episode, and we all know the episodes. This notion. But to go back to something you said about when you saw the Earth, there's a video that I think you posted recently, and I'm going to have to look for it and make sure repost it. I think you posted on your LinkedIn page recently. I want to repost it. And you are just going, wow, wow, wow. Can you help us take us to that moment then? Because I hear there's a whole conversation about the overview effect. But before we talk about the overview effect, tell us about that emotional, if you can recall it, because maybe it's so ephemeral, it's just something that you can experience, but help us understand what that felt like.
It is difficult to express truly what that felt like, because I don't think like human language was born on Earth for the purposes of Earth. I think once we go out into space and beyond our atmosphere, words kind of break down and don't accurately describe what we're feeling or seeing, and combining new feelings and new sights. So anyways, I'm going to try. Any expectation you have about seeing our planet or seeing a celestial body up close are going to be blown out of the water and likely exceeded, just because pictures really don't do it justice. Video doesn't really do it justice. Just our eyes are so much more well adapted to see, in high definition than any camera will ever be and any screen will be able to produce. So it was just an amazing view. And I think taking that moment, like, it's not just the view, it's the fact that, like, you're seeing this from space after having just ridden a rocket and flown multiple times the speed of sound to get out of the atmosphere. So it's all of these, this excitement, this elation, this really unknown but childlike curiosity, and you're just completely open to the experience. And so that first time I looked out the window, I could just see, like, this vastness of everything. As part of my training, my personal training, I was trying to study the geography of the New Mexico area where we launched from, thinking that I'd be able to pick out, like, rivers and mountains and lakes and things like that from space, which you can if you're really paying attention to that. But what I didn't account for is, from space, you have a global perspective. I could see, like, half a continent. And so it puts things into a different perspective. Like, a river and a mountain don't seem quite as interesting or significant, not that they aren't, but when you can see the entire Western Americas. And so I think it was just that surprise and shock. And I think one of the things I said was, you can see so far. You're used to just seeing, when you look at the horizon, it just stops. You can't really see where it is. It just goes, turns around. You can't see it anymore. But from Earth, you can see a lot more. You can see the edge of the horizon. You can see, like, the thin layer of atmosphere, this very small gas layer that's keeping us alive and everything we know about it. And it was just all kind of very wonderful and amazing. And combining that with just kind of floating in zero gravity and having new and different sensations and body feels, it was unimaginable. It was a very special moment.
So since my camera is acting up, I'm going to keep it off and continue the conversation and spotlight you. So seeing this blue marble, seeing this thin line of our atmosphere, which, when you talk about the 9 planetary boundaries, so for those of you who are not into this the way I am, one of the things that we talk about in the community of the Global Sustainable Development Goals, we've been trying to get into the language of more everyday use, is that we have to learn to live within the 9 planetary boundaries, right? So we're talking about water resources, we're talking about mineral resources in terms of some of the key minerals we need, nitrogen fixation. We're talking about the whole issue of the balance between the hydrogen and carbon, so the whole climate balance as well. And there's also this issue, those of you who might remember the conversation, if you're not too young, the issue of hydrofluorocarbons, and when they started worrying about it, we were burning a hole in the ozone layer. All of those things are boundaries which scientists have calculated that we have already come into the danger zone of approaching critical life cycle for some of what we're going through. So somehow we've got to change our whole economic construct. The question I'm thinking about is, and you may not be able to answer it, but I think this is why this idea of the overview effect and having more people experience it is a conversation that's happening in the analog community, and saying, well, maybe we can find a way to duplicate it. I don't think you can. I don't think you can do it if even by a simulation, because we're going to know we're in a simulation, right? So it won't be the same as when we're actually living this thing. So when you think about this, the overview effect, do you think you have changed in any construct around how you view our planet, its fragility, and our place in it as stewards? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think it's too soon to tell if I've changed as a person, but I think what has happened is it's confirmed the things that I thought I knew, and I saw it firsthand. And so you can be more convinced of something the more pieces of evidence you have that show you that. So, I think intellectually we know that the planet is fragile, and we know that our ecosystems are out of balance because of burning fossil fuels and carbons and our agriculture and all of the farming and how we treat our oceans. I think we know all of those things, but very few of us have actually seen aspects of that. Like you probably haven't seen the giant garbage heap in the Pacific Ocean, or you probably weren't in Australia for one of the largest wildfires in our planet's history. But these things because you believe in the truth of journalism, and you believe in the truth of science and the scientific method. But then you go and you see the planet and you're like, I get it. I see it. I see our planet, which for one is just a construct for everybody else. You think you live on a planet. And that's why you have conspiracy theorists who haven't seen the planet themselves and all that. But yeah, I think it just adds to the pool of evidence that, you can't really deny where we are, what we are, how we're doing things, because you see visual evidence of the fragility of our environment and our ecosystem. And you see how isolated we are. Like the closest other celestial body is like 250,000 miles away, and we can't even fathom 250,000 miles. That's why we say two words that we're already familiar with: quarter and million. We're just trying to conceptualize things that are really hard for our tiny human brains to really understand. But on the overview effect, I do want to add one thing. Is it's going to take a while before we get most of humanity in space. There's a lot of people, and space is still very difficult and expensive, and we're only sending like 4 to 6 people at a time on a planet of nearly 8 billion. So it's going to take a while, right?
For sure.
I do think there's something, let's call them high value or high leverage individuals, and giving people platforms. And so I think that's the exciting thing about this new space race. To date, it's been mostly military personnel, mostly men, mostly Americans who have gone to space. And that's the only perspective we have, but that is not the majority of the planet. Like America is a very small sliver of humanity. Men are only half of the planet. And so we haven't really seen and experienced the true perspective of space through enough people's eyes where we have what I would call a statistically representative sample of the thing that we're trying to characterize with words and visuals. And so I think where we're at now is we have the ability to send people like Dr. Cyan Proctor and my crewmate, Jamila Gilbert, who are artists. And these people, they think differently, they see differently. They have different cultural backgrounds. They've got, they grew up differently in different parts of the world. They speak different languages. And so I think all of these things combine into giving us a more clear picture of how we can understand and characterize what space is and what it means to our species and our planet. And I think once we do that, I don't think we necessarily need to send everyone to space for it to have a cultural impact. We just need to send enough people so we get an understanding of what it's like from a bunch of different perspectives to see how anyone and everyone can participate in whichever way they can. And so I think of that as like a cultural critical mass, where we've sent enough people who have an impact on the culture that can start to steer it organically in a way that accelerates our pursuit of space and our celestial exploration.
Well, I think that is absolutely well said. We have a couple of minutes before you have to go. This overview effect, I think a lot of us are talking about it. We need to have planetary consciousness made. It's one of the reasons why I actually wrote my first moon runnings film. I'm sure you will understand the moon runnings concept, Chris, and cool runnings, moon runnings, which is about how do we, because the moon is life and time was the first to be on the moon, and it was written to do a performance at ASU in March of the Future in 2016. So the show is natural space. When you look forward, what things I'm doing now is not only trying to get into this society on ground, and we focus largely on space or agendas.
Sorry, Dr. Claire, sorry to interrupt. I'm having a hard time understanding you. It's been getting quite choppy. I'm not sure if I was able to catch your question there.
I'm not.
Yeah, you're not coming in clearly at all. Sorry.
Yes, you're not coming in clearly at all. Yep. Let me see. Okay. Dr. Nelson? Yes. Oh, your communication is horrible. I'm not sure. Well, Dr. Nelson? Well, I know, Chris, that you had a hard stop at 12:30 and it's 12:25 now. I would like to do is I'd like to open up the chat to see if anybody had any questions for you. I see somebody's just joining now, Mr. Downer. Okay, so I'm now the host. Okay, fabulous.
Sure, I'd be happy to take one or two questions.
Okay. Well, let's see. Now we have Dr. Jaja. Oh, I'm sure Dr. Jaja has been listening in. Okay. I like during your conversation, I was listening, and what I found very interesting is, and I'm learning more and more about how our experiences as a youth impact our careers and shape our lives. And what type of experiences well, you talked about living in Florida and being able to see in your community aerospace missions and projects being part of your, functioning life. What would you recommend for a youth at this point who may not be, who has an interest in space? What type of classes should they be taking, or look to take, or explore? What areas should they look to explore as far as topic wise when searching for space and their participation and different types of participation in the space industry?
I like that question because I think the answer is different now than maybe it was maybe 5, 10, or maybe 20 years ago. And
Yes.
so any class you want is the answer, because there's so many different ways to participate in the space industry today that what was called the traditional path, I don't think is the only path anymore. So I think my path is, I'm an engineer. If you want to be an engineer and go design stuff, I can tell you what classes you should take to be an engineer.
Right.
But I've got friends and colleagues who work at my company and other companies that I'm familiar with who are doing finance at a space company, who are doing graphic design work at a space company, who are doing human resources at a space company, who are doing real estate development for space projects. So there's so many different ways to participate in the space economy, even just today, that I don't think anyone needs to feel like if they want to do space, they have to follow this path. Because I think that's going to be less organic, and you're going to have a harder time finding passion if you're acting outside of your zone of interest or things that keep you excited. So I think in our modern age, our access to information and education is so pervasive that's really no excuse. You can go know anything you want to know. So I think just get on the internet and start asking questions and looking at stuff. Check your resources, make sure you're pulling data from valid and trusted sources. Better yet, go to the library and pull up books. Publishers tend to vet their resources more than internet websites do. But yeah, I think read a lot. I'm a big fan of immersion. So anything you can do to immerse yourself in a topic. Say you want to learn about the moon. Go read a book about the moon, go watch all the science fiction movies about the moon you can find, go find a book club about the moon, find other people in your community and your friend group who want to talk about the moon. Write short stories about the moon. There's so many different ways. But I think in
Right.
that way, you can start to contextualize different pieces of information. And once you have enough information about a topic that seems like it's somewhat separate, you start to see connections in between things that maybe you didn't see connections before. And that's how you go from like a foundation of knowledge to just being a subject matter expert in that thing. And it happens pretty
Mhm.
quickly. But it first starts with that foundation
Passion.
process and being interested in enough to go
Right.
be immersed in it. I think you can follow that model with any version of the topic. So yeah, it's not maybe a straightforward answer, like go take, Calc 1 and Calc 2, but
Right, right.
go follow your passions, and I'm sure you can find a way to fold that into a career in the space industry.
Fantastic, fantastic. Let's see.
I think I can take one more question.
Okay, I see we're at the 12:30 hour. I don't see any hands up right now.
I see
What
a
I
question in the chat. What advice would you
Okay,
give to a high school student who wishes to pursue aerospace engineering?
there you go. You got it.
Uh,
Aerospace. Mhm.
that question I can take a hack at. I'm an aerospace engineer. Um, what's the best advice? I think just love learning. Find a passion for learning. I think one thing that they don't teach us in schools enough is how to learn.
Mhm.
We're just kind of taught and you're expected to learn, but no one's following up to see if like this is how you learn best. So I think do some introspection and look at examples in your life where you're really excited about something and how you were able to dive in head first and really learn that thing. But I think there's a lot of research out there and even books to like learn how to learn. And I think very similar to what I was talking about before in my previous answer, it's like once you've build a foundation of knowledge, things just kind of build on top of that very, very
Mhm.
easily. But for any engineering degree, I would recommend making sure you understand the foundation and the fundamentals. A lot of equations that you'll come across are very simple equations, but could you go derive them yourself? Do you understand the underlying physical principles? Keep asking the question why until you can't find any more answers. And now you're on the cutting edge of science. Why do two atoms bond together? Well, because of, covalent bonds and ionic bonds. Ask why 3 times. You're like at quantum mechanics, and now you don't really know
Yes.
a lot because you're not an astrophysicist yet, but there's people asking those hard questions. So keep asking why until you can't find any more answers. And then you've probably found the lowest possible level of foundational knowledge.
Yes. Yes. I think they say you're supposed to drill down maybe 5 levels of why. Yes.
Yeah,
So
it's a
Dr.
good
Nelson is,
mental model
yes,
called the 5 whys.
exactly. Mr. Down is saying thank you. Dr. Nelson is saying that her camera has died. We are at 12:32, and I know that you have to go. I'm not going to hold you. And for our listening audience, we will be back for our 1 o'clock session. Thank you, Mr. Huey. I so appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
and spending your time with us. I know Dr. Nelson will be back in contact with you, and we'll see you again. So everybody else
Thank
will
you.
be back again shortly. And let's see.